A very happy Halloween, everyone. Ted from Nerd Immersion here. And honestly, to just increase the spooky vibes, I just turned my overhead lights off, and it kind of I feel like it does a pretty good job of giving a Halloween vibe. But anyway, I thought we would continue on some more 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide content. Then I'm going to jump back, I think, for a little bit back to Player's Handbook to finish covering all the classes that I didn't do, so we can queue up our content where we compare it with Tales of the Valiant. But I had already covered what hazards were in the 2024 Player's Handbook, as there were 5 hazards in there that we talked about. There is, however, a list of additional hazards contained in the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide. So I thought we could go ahead and take a look at some of those right now. So before I jump over to that, though, if you like what I do here, consider hitting subscribe. It's literally, you just mouse right on over and click it, and we're good to go. All right, so here we go. Hazards. It talks about how there's some in the player's handbook, and it says there's severity and level. Right, so each hazard in this section is designated as a nuance or as deadly for characters of certain levels. So you'll basically see, right, if it's a deadly hazard, for example, brown mold is a deadly hazard for levels 5 to 10 and is a nuisance hazard for levels 11 to 16. And you'll see that terminology as we go along here. So first up here, we have brown mold. It says it resembles a furry light brown carpet. It's basically what kind of similar to what we have here in the real world. It is a fungus that feeds on warmth. When a creature enters a space within 5 feet of the mold or starts their turn there, they must make a Constitution saving throw or take 4d10 cold damage, as again, it is basically trying to suck the warmth out of you. Because of that, it does have immunity to fire damage, and any source of fire brought near it instantly causes the mold to instantly expand across the surface and towards the fire, creating a new patch that covers a 10-foot square. That and then to destroy it, deal any amount of cold damage. I really like that because you might see like this whole brown mold area, and like I feel like most people's instinct is, oh God, kill it with fire. And could you imagine a small little patch of brown mold and somebody throws a fireball at it to destroy it, and it just expands everywhere to where that fireball was, and now there's even more brown mold. Thankfully, in that instance, it's a fireball, so it's probably at a distance, not something that's in a line, because then it's basically you're making the mold come right back to you. So that's pretty interesting. Speaking of fireball, we queue up next the fireball fungus, which is a deadly hazard for levels 5 to 10. I think you can probably tell what this is, but it is a little mushroom that is luminous, and then it has an AC 10, HP 6, and immunity to psychic damage. When it drops to 0 hit points, it explodes as if a fireball spell, so 8d6 fire damage, with a save DC of 15. It says at higher levels, the explosion of a fireball fungus causes other fireball fungi in the area of effect to explode as well. You can scale the hazard for higher levels by adding 1 additional fungus at levels 11 to 16 or 3 additional fungus at levels 17 to 20. I also really like this because I think this has a potential very high risk, high reward if you are going to maybe salvage fireball fungus, because notice it doesn't ignite until it is dropped to 0 hit points. So I think if you're willing to risk it and you want to go in there and try to basically harvest some of these fireball fungi, you essentially will have like almost the equivalency of fireball scrolls, but again, they need to take 6 points of damage. So as long as you're able to carefully extract them, you could essentially be carrying around freebie fireballs or little bombs, but also in theory, if somebody hits you with something and you're holding them, they also should ignite. So consider that. All right, next we have green slime, as you can see happening here. Poor Sheila's getting burnt on the shoulder. And just a nuisance even from levels 1 to 4. So again, it's basically acidic goop. 1 patch of green slime covers a 5-foot square. It has blind sight to a range of 30 feet, and it drops from walls or ceiling when it detects any movement below. You guys have played video games. You've side scrollers with the little dropping green blobs of acid. That's what this is. Can't move beyond that. A creature aware of the slime can avoid it with a DC 10 dex save. If you come in contact with it, you take a D10 acid damage. You take that damage again at the start of your turn until it's scraped off using an action or it's destroyed. Against wood or metal, it deals 2d10 acid damage each round, and any non-metal, magical wood or metal used to scrape the slime off is destroyed. Direct sunlight or any amount of cold, fire, or radiant damage destroys it. This is interesting. Inferno. It's essentially just a wildfire, which I never really thought of in terms of a hazard, but also this could be a very interesting thing to utilize. Right, so how many times as D&D players do we just start slinging around fireballs or fire bolts or what have you, and like that's it, right? It goes off and that's it. But what if one time, very much like how seemingly innocuous things in the real world lead to wildfire spreading, what if that is a function that, like, not all the time, but at some point where, somebody accidentally, set something on fire, shot a fireball in a forest to kill a bunch of gnolls or something, and now you've started an inferno because the forest catches fire. Like, that could be an interesting. You don't want to use it all the time. Let me start there, right? Because then people are going to be hesitant to ever use fire magic in that instance. But I think depending on the scenario, especially if you set it up like, hey, hasn't really rained recently, the forest here is really dry, give them a little bit of hints, and that may lead to that down the road. Deadly hazard for lower levels, nuisance for higher. Whenever an uncontrolled fire spreads, it creates an inferno. It contains at least 4 contiguous 10-foot cubes, and then each one can be doused with 10 gallons of water. That's a lot of water. Exposure to a strong wind for a minute causes it to grow, adding a D4 new 10-foot cubes. An inferno deprived of fuel burns itself out after a D10 minutes. An inferno damages any vegetation or object that isn't being worn. 4d10 fire damage immediately, and again at the end of each minute. Any creature that enters the inferno for the first time or starts its turn there also takes that 4d10 fire damage and is burning, the hazard we learned about from the player's handbook. All right, we have poisonous gas. Again, pretty self-explanatory. Also, I think a lot of these, there's separate stuff here in the Dungeon Master's Guide for traps, but obviously utilizing any of these as part of a trap would also work. All right, so gas fills a 10-foot cube, continuously or periodically replenished by some natural magical source. The strong wind will disperse it after a minute. Any creature that enters the poisonous gas for the first time on a turn or starts it there makes a DC 12 con save, takes a D10 poison damage. The creatures also have disadvantage in the gas, disadvantage on death saving throws, which is a nice, it kind of makes sense, right? If I'm dying in a poison gas field, it's probably going to be hard to literally catch my breath and survive. And then again, if you want to upscale it, there are scaling rules here. All right, the classic thing myself and so many other 90s kids said, or really thought I was going to run into quicksand a lot more frequently than I ever have, which is never, knock on wood. But I do feel like a lot of us thought quicksand was going to be a lot more present in our lives based on how much it was always in all of our entertainment. But either way, again, only a nuisance for lower levels. It's a 10-foot deep pit and a 10-foot foot square. Creature that is in the area sinks a d4 plus 1 feet into the quicksand and has the restrained condition. At the start of each of the creature's turns, it sinks another d4 feet. As long as the creature isn't completely submerged in quicksand, it can take an action to try to escape. Doing so requires an athletics check, DC 10 plus the number of feet they've sunk into the quicksand. A creature that is completely submerged has total cover and the blinded condition and risks suffocation. A creature can pull another creature within its reach out of the quicksand by taking an action and succeeding on an athletics check. For this, it's a DC 5 plus the number of feet they've sunk in. And then again, it has scaling levels here. More feet and how deep it is and how far down they can sink. Honestly, this is a fantastic idea to just repurpose this as a spell too, right? Quicksand pit or a snare or sinkhole or some sort of earth-based spell where you're pulling somebody in, you basically create quicksand underneath them. That's something else to also consider with a lot of this kind of stuff. They can easily be repurposed to be a spell, a magical effect, a magic item or something. So I think this quicksand pit might end up becoming a spell for my geomancy wizard. I don't know exactly how it'll work, but it's a good basis. We have Razorvine here. Again, I think this one existed in 2014. It's exactly what it sounds like. It is vines that when you move through, you're going to take slashing damage. right? 10 foot high, 10 foot wide, 5 foot thick. It has AC and HP and things here. And then when a creature comes in contact with Razorvine for the first time, the creature must make a DC 10 Dex save or take a D10 slashing damage. Again, conjure Razorvine. You could maybe have an improved version of Entangle, that instead of it being like vines, it's razor vines. Maybe I don't know what you'd call it, but maybe you just call the spell Razorvine, and it's Entangle, but it's cast out of a higher level, maybe like a third level slot. But instead of just entangling plants, it's Razorvine. Or maybe your Wall of Thorns is actually a Wall of Razorvine. Lots of interesting ways to utilize these. All right, next up we have the River Styx. Hopefully you're not coming in contact with the River Styx too often. It is a nuisance hazard for higher levels. Courses through the lower plains. Certain fiends are immune to it, unless immune to the river's effects with a specific ability. A creature that drinks from the Styx, enters it, or starts its turn there must make a DC 20 intelligence save. On a failure, you're going to take 3d12 psychic damage and can't cast spells or take the magic actions for 30 days. An affected creature can drink from the Styx and swim in its waters without suffering any additional effects. So once you're there, if you're already in, you're already in. So it can be ended only by a greater restoration, heal, or wish spell. And if the effect isn't ended after 30 days, the effects become permanent and the creature loses all of its memories. At that point, nothing short of a wish will bring it back, or divine intervention maybe. Water taken from the Styx loses its potency after 24 hours. Arcana night hags, and other fell creatures might know rituals that can prolong the water's potency at your discretion. All right, another one I might be able to use for Theodore the Orange, my Geomancy Wizard, Rock Slide. When a rock slide occurs, each creature in its path must make a DC 15 Dex save. On a failure, they're going to take 2d10 bludgeoning damage, have the prone condition, and they move with the rock slide. On a successful save, a creature takes half as much damage only. When the rock slide stops, its space becomes difficult terrain, and all prone creatures in that space are buried under rock and debris. Oh, see, I love this. This is perfect. We're going to make this a spell tonight. A creature buried in this way has the restrained condition and has total cover. As an action, a creature can try to crawl out from under the rock pile. If the creature succeeds on a DC 15 athletics check, it is no longer restrained. Instead, it has the prone condition and is atop the rock pile. If the check fails, the creature remains buried and gains 1 level of exhaustion. Oh, wow, so powerful. Yeah, definitely going to make this a spell. A creature that has neither the incapacitated nor the restrained condition can spend 1 minute freeing another creature, and then it has scaling for damage as you level up. All right, next up we have Vicious Vine, which is separate from Razorvine. Vicious vines are animated by magic. They often cling to doorways and whatnot. Each Vicious Vine has 11 AC, 16 HP. When a creature enters a space within 5 feet of the vine for the first time on a turn or starts its turn there, the vine tries to coil around that creature. Target must make a dexterity saving throw or have the grappled condition. While grappled, the target takes necrotic damage from the vine's life-draining thorns at the start of each of the target's turns. It can only grapple one creature at a time. As an influence action, this is unique. A creature under the effect of Speak with Plants can attempt to persuade the plant to release the victim with a DC 10 persuasion check. A creature released by the vines in this way won't be attacked by the vine again for the next 24 hours. Again, the save DC and the amount of necrotic damage increases here for higher tiers. There is a spell in here, right? Whether this is Vicious Vine, this could definitely be some sort of thing to shut down. Like if you're running through a place and you were like trying to build like a barricade behind you to like stop enemies or whoever from pursuing you, putting up a Vicious Vine like on a door or something. I think that's pretty cool. All right, we have webs here. Again, we already know we have the web spell, so we don't really need that. But areas filled with webs are difficult terrain. A creature that enters a web-filled area for the first time or starts its turn there must make a dex save or be restrained. As an action, they can attempt to free themselves with an athletics or acrobatics check. And then again, they talk about what how much damage you need to do to one, and they are vulnerable to fire damage. And lastly, here we have yellow mold. Deadly for lower levels, nuisance for second tier. Yellow mold grows in dark places, and one patch covers a 5-foot square. If touched, the mold ejects a cloud of spores in a 10-foot cube. Any creature in that area must succeed on a DC 15 Constitution saving throw or take 2d10 poison damage and also have the poisoned condition. While poisoned, they're going to take a d10 poison damage at the start of each of their turns. The creature repeats the save at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on a success. Direct sunlight or any amount of fire damage destroys a patch of yellow mold. So there you go, folks. That is all of the extra hazards that they've added in the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide. I really like a lot of these. I'm hopeful that other future books will add additional hazards, like the Forgotten Realms campaign guide we're getting at the end of 2025. Maybe that will have Forgotten Realms specific style hazards. But like I said, the cool thing about these is the way they're written, several of them lend themselves to be spells or other things. So yeah, Quicksand Pit and Rock Slide. Definitely going to repurpose those myself into spells for a earth-based wizard, but any druid or otherwise should be able to use that as well if it, talk to your DM, figure it out. So, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. I hope you all have a wonderful and happy Halloween. I'll see you all next time.